In our previous presentation, we discussed about the importance of classical school, contributions of the Luther, Gulick and Lyndall Urwick with their personalities, and the importance of structure, organization and design. In this presentation, we are going to discuss about their principles of organization and the POSDCORB as explained by them, and the important criticisms on the classical school. According to this classical approach, which emphasizes the effectiveness of group of human beings depends upon the type of structure in which they are operating. The structure to them is the basic for any group effort. The structure, they believe, is capable of reducing the diversity in human nature and fits them into pattern where they have to respond according to the needs and demands of the organization. Being an employee, to adjust and adapt himself to the needs and expectations of the organization. From this premise, it flows that the impersonal norms, rules and the procedures have inherent capacity to train an individual in a way that he can fit into the system. Urwick observed that the lack of design is illogical, cruel, wasteful and inefficient. Urwick says it is cruel because the main sufferers from the lack of design are the individuals who work in the undertaking. The employer who has no clear idea about the duties of an employee may blame him if the results do not correspond with his vague notions. It is wasteful because unless jobs are clearly put together along lines of functional specialization, it is impossible to train new men. Further, when both the job and the man are uncertain, unknown quantities, unknown hours and days are likely to be expended in fruitless discussion and indecision. It is inefficient because if an organization is not found on principles, then those directing it have nothing to fall back on but personalities. Unless there are principles on which he can fall back and which are understood by everyone in the undertaking, it is inevitable that many unhealthy practices would enter into the organization. Why inefficiency? If principles are not there, you are working with the people and you have to depend upon the people. If the people are leaving, organization collapse. Depending on the principle, the person is working according to the principles and things are going on. Even a person leaves the organization, another person will come and do the work. The important to cut all unhealthy practices in organization, you have to depend upon principles. Universality of experience. What is the important aspect of Luther, Gulick and Lyndall Urwick is the claims of classical approach for a theoretical status is based on its faith that the principles that is enunciated are universally valid. Mooney observes that there is no principle in industrial organization as such that is not to be found in all the other spheres, but it is erroneous to infer that industrial organizers have borrowed these principles of organization from the older forms. He further emphasizes that a principle, if it is truly such, is a universal and a universal cannot be borrowed. It simply has a way of applying itself, and this is ever true by whatever name we may be pleased to call it. That could be one of the reasons why classical approach did not take cognizance of cultural, political, social and historical factors. The important aspect and also the criticism on classical school, they have not considered all these things, cultural, political, social, historical factors. They have depend upon how the organization is going to work perfectly based on a design, based on a structure, based on an organization according to the principle. The classical approach, on the contrary, formulated the principles in such a way that they are based on the premises that the underlying process in the organizational structure and its working are the same and therefore universal. So, according to them, all organizations are equal. Let them whatever cultural background, whatever historical background, whatever the political system controls. These principles are going to help the organization to run efficiently, effectively. One of the important example they quote this in the defense of their arguments. V.I. Lenin, he was the revolutionary and later the important man for the Bolshevik revolution, USSR at the time. He has open acknowledgement, even though being a communist against of a capitalistic systems, he has open acknowledgements of Taylor's contribution and its utility to Russian industrial development. The Bolshevik Party, Communist Party is against of capitalism, but for the industrial development, Lenin said, we have to adopt the Taylor's principles and contribution. It means certain techniques, certain principles are going to be useful for the development, whatever the political system works. This type of certain techniques developed to meet the needs of capitalist development are found relevant in a communist society, has come to be considered as an indicator of universality of organizational principles and their utility. Scientific validity of these principles. The principles of organization were developed based on experience gained in military and industrial organizations. The proponents of these principles are those who had a rich experience in a variety of organizations. They formulated them after considerable observation of working of human organizations. In other words, the principles have come to be propounded not from the philosophical exercise or figments of the imagination, but from a rigorous empirical observations. It is these factors that lend strength to the principles of organization. The classical approach is thus based on the premise that these principles have scientific validity. The whole of discussion is very clear. Everybody questioned them, you are mechanical, you are engineering, you are structure based, you are anti-human. So then to support of that, they have said all these are tested on human beings and organizations of industry, military and civil systems. Because after experimenting with the human beings, we are calling them as universal and the scientific validity. Now, let us come to the important aspects of these principles. Gulick expounded the 10 principles of organization. He was a lot influenced by the Henry Fayol's 14 basic elements. 1. Division of work or specialization. Basis of departmental organization, coordination through hierarchy, deliberate coordination, coordination through committees, decentralization, line and staff, unity of command, delegation, span of control. These are the 10 principles Luther Gulick said are the important for the organization. His important aspect was division of work. He further says, work division implies that the job to be performed to be broken into these component functions, and again each of the component functions be broken down into simple repetitive activity. At each stage, the subdivision of work is followed by the interrelating of the divided parts. Work has to divide it, further divided until last part of specialization is reached, and it has to be each and every place it is interlinked. The focus of attention shifted from grouping the various activities into subunits, collecting the subunits together to form units and interrelating the units to create the overhead organization. Thus, Gulick says, division of work and integration are the bootstraps by which mankind lifts itself in the process of civilization. These are the steps, bootstraps by mankind to lift itself into the process of civilization. The whole civilization you take, human beings has come like this only. Then the second important principle he called theory of departmentalization. How you are going to divide the work. This is known as famous principle called 4 P's. P for purpose, P for process, P for persons, P for place. The theory of departmentalization according to the Luther Gulick depend upon 4 P's. Once if you are dividing the work, take function. What are the functions of organization? Are you dividing according to the function? Or process of the work in organization? It goes for an industrial organization or something. Are you dividing like that? Or for whom you are working? Customers are there or clientele are there, the people who are coming to your organization. For example, if a pension office is there, you are dividing the office for the pensioners, women or other things, other part or whatever it is. Or Geographically dividing, your organization is taking care of the various geographical areas, according to them you are dividing. So, work division is based on 4 P's. Another important aspect, there is a called POSDCORB. This is an acronym. 7 principles of administration are 7 functions of an executive in organization. This is the expression of the POSDCORB. P stands for planning, O for organizing, S for staffing, D for directing, CO for coordinating, R for reporting, B for budgeting. These are the 7 executive functions. All the time, if a chief executive of a particular firm and organization, he has to keep in the mind POSDCORB. Planning. Planning is, that is a working out in a broad outline the things that need to be done and the methods for doing them to accomplish the purpose set for the enterprise. Planning, the first important work of an executive. Next is organizing, O. That is the establishment of the formal structure of authority through which work subdivisions are arranged, defined and coordinated for the defined objective. Then third is, he said, staffing, whole personal function of bringing in and training the staff and maintaining favorable conditions of the work. Directing, that is a continuous task of making decisions and embodying them in specific and general orders and instructions and serving as the leader of the enterprise. You have to direct the staff. Staff were recruited, organization is over, planning is over. It is not like that. Each and every point you have to direct how the things are going on. Then the 5th principle, he said, coordination. That is a all important duty of interrelating the various parts of the work. In the principles of administration, as Luther Gulick said, he has given a importance 3 principles for coordination. Coordination through hierarchy, coordination through committees, deliberate coordination. These are the 3 coordination principles he mentioned. Then reporting, that is keeping those to whom the executive responsible informed as to what is going on, which thus includes keeping himself and his subordinates informed through records, research and inspection. Organization lives on the reporting. From the bottom to top, each and everything has to be information has to go from bottom to top. What is happening, records, research, innovation, inspection, how the people are working, how the work is divided, etc. Then finally he says budgeting, with all that goes with budgeting in the form of fiscal planning and accounting. So these are the all important aspects of the POSDCORB as explained by the Luther Gulick. And as a students you have to keep in the mind, Luther Gulick's POSDCORB has taken from the British administration philosophy of Slocus. From there it has come, he has changed into the American model as a POSDCORB. Then Urwick identified 8 principles of organization. He said, principle of objective, that all organizations should be an expression of a purpose. Another principle called principle of correspondence, that authority and responsibility must be co-equal. Once you have an authority, you have given a work and you have a responsibility to continue with that. If it is a fail, he has to take care of each and everything. It is successful, that is the employees you have to give the credit. Then only the organization is going to be successful. The principle of responsibility, that the responsibility of higher authorities for the work of subordinates is absolute. So responsibility is not only lies with the subordinates, responsibility lies with the superiors also. Otherwise the organizations are not going to be successfully function. Then he said the scalar principle, there is a paramedical type of a structure is built up in an organization. In the scalar principle, the authority will step by step will come down. Information will go step by step to the up. Each and every step, each and every unit of the organization has to know what is happening in the organization. Then the principle of span of control. Span means executive's psychological control over the employees. How many people at a time he can control? So these authors says about 5 to 6 is maximum. Then he says the principle of specialization, limiting one's work to a single function. And again the principle of coordination, which is we already discussed the importance of about it, and the principle of definition. Definition means clear prescription of each and every duty. These are the basic contributions of Luther, Gulick and Lyndall, Urwick to the classical theory. So, that 8 principles of Lyndall, Urwick, 10 principles of Luther, Gulick, 7 important activities of POSDCORB, importance of structure, design, organization, training. These are the things they mentioned in the papers of Science of Administration. What is the contribution of these 2 people? These 2 people's contributions are as explained just now. But these classical theory was received a lot of criticism from various people. Although the principles of organization are based on the premises mentioned above, they are subjected to ruthless criticism and are dubbed as a postulates without any validity. And after 1937, their book has come and they said these are the principles of organization. There is a lot of criticism from the various angles and various quarters. The first person who attacked this approach was Herbert Simon, who was mainly responsible for shifting the focus from structure to human behavior. Still that time till 1940, 44 actually the contributions of Herbert Simon has come and the critics has come. So, till that time classical theory was a dominant and this mechanistic approach was dominant in understanding public organizations. Only Herbert Simon changed it to human behavior is most important in organization. He actually criticized this classical approach, he called them as proverbs. They are not principles, they are proverbs. He said ambiguity in principle, absence of scientific validity, incapable of prediction, mechanistic in emphasis, pro-capitalistic bias, pro-management bias, absence of sophistication. As the principles lack scientific validity, according to the critics, their capacity for prediction is extremely low. A scientific principle should be capable of not only explaining the causal relations, but be able to predict the results. For instance, a principles of formula like H2O, 2 molecules of hydrogen and 1 molecule of oxygen produce water, holds good to all times, universally accepted in all situations and all places. But the principles whatever you are talking, they are not going to be stand like this. Hence, you can't call them as principles. The type of capability is absent in the organization principles. For instance, a principles like a span of control which emphasizes on limitations of human nature does not go beyond. The questions such as how to arrive at the limitations, are there any methods to quantify these limitations? Is there any way to judge an ideal supervisory capacity? With the result, it is extremely difficult to know what is the span of control in a given organization. It is obvious that with the help of such principle, it would not be possible to relate the span of control to efficiency. The question is, you are saying because of span of control and efficiency is coming, but you are mechanistically controlling the mind of the human being and fitting them into a structure. Most of the principles, as pointed out earlier, were formulated in the wake of transformation of Western societies into capitalistic societies. Capitalism triggers the productive forces, but it largely ignores the essence of human growth. It has a tendency to commoditize human being. As a result, most of the concepts have a concern for production and not to the feeling of the worker engaged production. That work has a philosophy and that it is a means for expression of workers' personality does not find a place in this approach. The important aspect is mechanically you are identifying each and everything, you are not taking care of the mind of the human being, mind of the worker, behavior of the worker, mental aspects of the worker. These type of criticisms are there on the classical theory, but classical theory's approach is mainly to respond to raising capitalism in the West. It has been propounded to ensure the efficiency and economy to step up production. It is almost a pioneering attempt to systematic human organizational experience. Though there is a lot of criticisms, even if you are doing something and the people say no, it is not correct. But the question is, as per the time, whether they stand, whether the society accepted and the people are following it or not. It is from empirical observations that the principles of organizations are evolved. They are not just brought it from philosophical aspects. It is an empirical observations both from industry and the military and adopted into the civil systems and refined and expanded. These principles, which constitute the basic components of structure, are intended to organize the group effort in an orderly and systematic way. This approach, that is a classical approach, brings out significantly that without a structure there would be large scale dissipation of human energy. The systematic search led to the enunciation of certain principles which can be useful in organizing any group effort. The strength of these principles lies in the process from which they come up. They are based on simple truths, common observations, and based on day-to-day experience. They may lack universal validity and theoretical sophistication, but absence of it can cause considerable confusion in any human organization. As a students, we can simply say that you can't give a theoretical sophistication to it. You can't show the universal validity of the universal truth like a H2O is a water, but without these principles, there is going to be considerable confusion, unrest, anarchy in human organization. Whenever we are analyzing more, they need much more careful analysis. The classical approach attempts to systematize organizational experience and paved the way for subsequent breakthrough in conceptual development. It also provided the stimulus for a lively debate. All these factors make the approach important and relevant to the study of public administration. The people who ever criticize these things, but they never discarded it. If you go to any organization, industrial, civil, military, public corporations, you go anywhere, the structure of organization is working as said by the classical school. That itself is a benefit, that itself their contribution to the human organizations. Dear students, the whole of this presentation is based on the principles, contributions of the Luther Gulick and Lyndall Urwick for the principles of organization.